single Republican, or any politician for that matter, would back Trump. Here is where I will defend the situation. Before you call me a monster and an animal for defending the situation, I will say this. The cop was following the procedure.
Never said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of You Made It Political. You can't make a right decision in corporate America anymore without being labeled as a racist. We all know what's happened with the cancel culture situation, the woke mob constantly going after every single company and decision that doesn't fit their narrative. We've seen it in Georgia, we've seen it with children's books, and now we're seeing it with the tobacco company. Recently, the FDA makes a great move, sponsored and endorsed by Biden himself in the White House, to ban menthol cigarettes. But that ban is now being considered, you called it, racist. You just can't win, and it's getting worse, and it's now to the point where these companies are constantly being held hostage, and it's gone so far the other way that it's almost being considered counterproductive. And we'll have to hear what Georgia state governor has to say about that as well, with the latest attack on his state when Major League Baseball left, and it's now being very counterproductive. So we'll start our story over at Fox News today, where we take a look at an article that basically now attacks the menthol company, or the tobacco company, and certain menthol cigarettes for being considered racist now because they think this ban is going to target black people. And now they're dragging police reform into it. The whole thing's a freaking shit show, and we're going to cover it all here on the show. Let's head over to the Facebook Warrior Cam and take a look at what the article has to say about the insanity of the racist remarks regarding menthol cigarettes. So, as we can see here, besides a jumbled mess, clearly, guys, can we get this hook back up again? Because nobody can see what's going on. So, menthol cigarettes, FDA now comes out and decides that they want to ban menthol cigarettes. Okay, I think it's a great move. I think it's a phenomenal move. But now, the White House is being made aware of the fact that there's discrimination concerns. It's like, why would there be discrimination concerns? We're trying to make a very smart, health-conscious move. We all know that menthol cigarettes have certain toxins in them that lead to a lot more complications than, say, your average tobacco. There's a lot of chemicals in them that the Biden administration finally is tackling and wants to get rid of. So the White House has been made aware of concerns that the Biden administration's proposed menthol cigarettes ban could unfairly target black people. Principal Deputy Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said on Thursday. So I'm like, wait, what the hell? What's going on here? Why is this being considered racist? I know the woke mob has done a great job in getting their way in trying to steer the narrative for America. Look at what's happening with police reform. Look what's happening with Black Lives Matter and the protests and the riots. They keep pushing. And although I feel like they've done a good job getting their message out, they're now pushing a little bit too far. It's now getting to the point where we just think the whole thing's ridiculous. And when you start to think these things are ridiculous, guess what? We start pushing back and say, you know what, the hell with you guys. Forget the whole thing. We're done listening. We're done catering to your bullshit demands. And we're done being made felt hostage with every corporate decision that we make. So it's a great move. They're trying to get rid of menthol cigarettes. But obviously, people are upset. Nope, this is going to target the local black community. Well, how? How is this going to target the black local communities? Well, let's take a look at the article. So I had to break this down even further and dissect it. And I finally got to the bottom of what's really going on here. This is way more than just the black community crying racism. This has to do with more police reform and more changes being rammed down the throats of our local police districts. And quite frankly, I think it's disgusting and it's not fair. So the White House is aware of concerns that the Biden administration's proposed menthol cigarette ban could unfairly target black people. It's like, what? Why? Wouldn't they just buy different cigarettes? I mean, why is banning menthol cigarettes going to target black people? There's like a million cigarette options. Why are we making a big deal out of this? So Jean-Pierre, who is the press secretary, principal deputy press secretary, was asked about the menthol ban during a press gaggle on Thursday. Reverend Al Sharpton leave him to be involved in every freaking controversial issue for his 5 seconds of fame. Said bans are unfair for black smokers. So this is Al Sharpton now coming out with more political nonsense for the spotlight, and he wants to now classify or label menthol or the decision to ban menthol cigarettes as racism. Al Sharpton has said the ban is unfair. Well, how is it unfair, Al? Enlighten us. We are aware of that, and we take that seriously, the concerns that have been raised about discriminatory policy, policing, and so addressing racial bias in policing is a priority. So Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, or the deputy press secretary, says, okay, we're aware of that because now Al Sharpton's now running his mouth. It's unfair to black people. So now Washington's like, whoa, hold on a second. Because again, they flip-flop and change their mind every 5 seconds to cater to votes. The Biden administration they're just so full of it when it comes to trying to cater to all the demands of everybody. And that's what's really getting the Biden administration in a lot of trouble these days. They're constantly switching to cater to everybody. And that's just going to screw your base ultimately, because it's impossible. You cannot cater to every single demand and every single lobbyist and every single group. Because ultimately what you're going to do is you're going to look weak, you're going to look soft, and you're going to start losing the support from pretty much everybody. Rather than putting your foot down and say, listen, all of you need to chill out for a second, okay? We have we're trying to run the country here. We have very important decisions to make. Some you're going to be happy with, some you're not. Deal with it. And this is what I really liked about President Trump. He was just very straightforward shooter. And when he came out with decisions and remarks, he stuck by them. He didn't test a concept for ratings. He didn't test a concept for the polls. And if the polls didn't agree, then went back on his word, which is what we're seeing with Joe Biden. And it's going to kill him if he decided to run for president again, which we all know he stands zero chance. No one's going to vote for this guy again, because anybody who votes for Joe Biden, you're voting for far left, radical, progressive agendas. And I think the country is sick to death of it. But we've seen Biden go back on his word time and time again. And he's now doing it with menthol cigarettes. They're going back on their word and they look weak. And I think it's just going to piss everybody off even more. So Al Sharpton starts running his mouth and says, hold on a second. The ban on menthol cigarettes is unfair to the black community. Okay, well, now all of a sudden the White House is like, okay, sure enough, Al, we understand because we're weak as shit and we can't make a decision to save our lives without trying to appease to every single voter in America. So we're going to kind of put a little spin on this, is that's going to make the black community happy, also push our police reform agenda, and stick to our guns on health, because health at the end of the day is the most important thing, right? I mean, that's why you're banning menthol cigarettes, because you're trying to look out for everybody. You know menthol cigarettes are bad. FDA is now banning them. But we still need to make sure now, because the black community's pissed off, that we cater to that market. So here's their little shitty spin. So then they go on to basically say, this is why we strongly support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which I think is insane that they named this act after George Floyd. George Floyd, who had a rap sheet a mile long. Yes, what was done to him was horrible. But come on, we're now naming bills after criminals. It's ridiculous. Nevertheless, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and we need legislation to directly address police reform. I'm like, where the hell did police reform, or when the hell, or why the hell does police reform have anything to do with anything? So that immediately raised a red flag. And I thought, wait a second. This is another freaking stupid attempt to change the way police handle the black community. This is another attempt at changing more policies within police departments that are going to eventually hurt them even more and put their lives in even more danger. So this whole kind of bullshit narrative that Al Sharpton is leading really has to do with police reform, and I'll tell you why. So this is why we strongly support the George Floyd Act, and we need legislation to directly address police reform, even as we regulate tobacco industry practices that harm Americans, she continued. This is the deputy press secretary talking. The Food and Drug Administration moved to ban menthol cigarettes and other flavored tobacco products on Thursday. So this is just yesterday, and already there's freaking national uproar. Racism, it's going to disproportionately affect the black community and the whole woke mob, the left, Stacey Abrams. I mean, everybody involved here. Al Sharpton had jumped on the black bandwagon, or the victimizing the black community bandwagon. So this all happened yesterday, and a decision that Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra said reflects the Biden administration's commitment. So remember, this all started with the Biden administration. They're the ones who want to ban menthol cigarettes. Said reflects the Biden administration's commitment to improve the health of all Americans and to tackle health disparities in our most marginalized communities. Listen, we don't need to bring black communities into any of this. Menthol cigarettes are bad for all people, period. That's it. Listen, smoking's bad for all people, period. We should have banned tobacco and products and smoking decades ago when we realized how harmful it was to people's health. So I know we're never going to do that because the tobacco company pretty much rules the country with the NRA. But they are putting the foot down, and they're saying we can't have cigarette products as dangerous as menthol products on the market because they're a lot worse than your traditional tobacco products. The chemicals in there seem to have elevated levels of potential diseases, and the death rate's just higher, I guess, linked to menthol cigarettes. But they're now bringing the black community into this. It has nothing to do with the black community. This 100% has to do with health. That's it. So now Biden's come out and he's going to go back on his word. So Biden administration now is like, oh shit, we pissed off the black community. Let's go back on our word. Let's backpedal here and try to look strong and powerful and like we know what we're doing, but we're also going to let the black people continue to smoke menthols if they get their hands on them. It's like, do you give a shit about their health or not, Joe? Like, you got to pick one. You can't just say we're going to ban cigarettes, menthol cigarettes, but to keep the black community happy, we're going to let them continue to smoke cigarettes. It makes no sense to me. So Jean-Pierre, the deputy press secretary, emphasized that such FDA regulation would not result in enforcement in individuals. Why? If you're banning menthol cigarettes because you're worried about everybody's health, why wouldn't you want to kind of enforce that individuals don't smoke them? It's like drugs. Okay. So cocaine's illegal, right? Why do you enforce it on individuals? Sure, you're not going to let companies manufacture cocaine. Is this not the same thing? If you're not going to let companies manufacture menthol cigarettes, but you're going to let people smoke them if they get their hands on it. Why don't we just make that norm with all drugs? You can't manufacture cocaine, but you need to now let people do coke individually because maybe it's racist towards certain communities if you don't let them do coke. I mean, where does it end? This is opening the door to now what? You're going to let you're going to start allowing crack because it affects certain communities? No, of course you're not. So why are we doing this with cigarettes right now or certain types of very dangerous menthol cigarettes? Surely crack cocaine within the black community, going after them, I mean, you're not going to let them do it. Straight up. So I don't know why we're going back on, allowing people to engage in dangerous activities because the black community has a problem with it, because Al Sharpton has a problem with it. With menthol, this is a public health decision that will help curb addiction and save lives. Okay, fair enough. You want to curb addiction and save lives. But let's be clear here, she goes on to say, the deputy press secretary. If implemented, these rules affect only commercial activity. So FDA does not regulate the possession of tobacco products by individuals for personal use. And this rule would not make individual consumer possession or use of menthol cigarettes a crime, nor change enforcement standards. How are you going to get your hands on menthol cigarettes if we outlaw the production of them? Unless the Indian reserves start bootlegging them. And if they do, well, you're going to have to go after them, right? Because you're not supposed to be producing menthol cigarettes. But if they do, and the black community goes to the reserves to get their cigarettes, don't go after them. Because I know we're trying to curb addiction and save lives. But if the black community wants to smoke them and kill themselves, let them. Because we don't want the police now going after our precious people of color. Remember, we're supposed to handle the black community very carefully. So we have rules for white people now, and we have rules for black people. If you catch a white person smoking a menthol, it's okay to go after them because we know things are going to be the outcome of that interaction between between a white person and a cop is going to be different than if you go after black people. You can't go after black people today. You have to be very careful. If they resist arrest, just let them go. If they pull a gun on you, try not to shoot first. Try to use a taser on somebody who is about to stab somebody else to death if you could. We really appreciate that. So now these issues are holding our police agencies hostage. Like every decision that's made now, we have to consider the feelings and the emotions of the black community. No matter how dangerous it is, it doesn't matter. If there's a bomb threat in a black community, we need to treat that differently than maybe a bomb threat in a white community or an Asian community. We already know we have to consult with LeBron James. Everything we do. It's like, well, hold on. What would LeBron do? I mean, that should be like the new motto, the new tagline within law enforcement. Before you pull your gun and defend yourself so you don't die and leave your family fatherless, ask yourself, what would LeBron do? And then take action. Well, if it was up with LeBron, they'd let the criminal shoot you first. Or LeBron would say, let the girl stab the other girl to death. Use a taser. And if it all goes wrong, so what? People died. But at least the cop didn't kill another person. So it's okay to let other people kill each other, but don't you dare let a cop kill somebody. So we are in a very dangerous situation in America right now, where corporations can't make a single decision without black community or police reform being dragged into it. I mean, Al Sharpton didn't need to run his mouth. Why does Al Sharpton need to run his mouth and say that this is now unfair to the black community? He just wants more. Al Sharpton wants nothing but his 5 seconds of fame. Al Sharpton doesn't give a shit about anybody but Al Sharpton. Let's be honest. He's making bank off of his whole reverend preacher, lawyer, whatever the hell you want to call him, out of all of these initiatives that he drives forward. So, menthol cigarettes have been banned by the FDA. Al Sharpton thinks that's unfair to the black community. The White House now is going back on their word and saying, well, hold on, you can't produce them, but if black people get their hands on them, we're not going to make it a criminal offense. Very similar to what just happened with marijuana use. But we all know marijuana, I don't care what anybody says, is a lot safer than inhaling chemicals. So, if we're going to allow it for marijuana, and we're going to now allow it for cigarettes that have been banned, let's just start allowing it for any drug. Cocaine, heroin. You can't produce heroin, but if people use it, leave them alone. Oh, that's not okay. Why? Because heroin is used amongst, primarily, from white people. Cocaine, let's be honest, it's used primarily amongst wealthy white people. So you can continue to go after them. Marijuana, nope. Why? Because more black people use it? So we want to legalize marijuana so we can stop going after them? Okay, fine. Menthols, nope. Let them still use it. So it's a very dangerous situation we're getting ourselves into. It's very hypocritical. The double standards continue. And the ACLU said a ban would disproportionately impact people of color. So we now got other people. So Al Sharpton starts running his mouth. We now have other people jumping on board the bandwagon. In a letter sent to Becerra and other officials, the ACLU, along with dozens of others, including the Drug Policy Alliance, said while such ban is no doubt well-intentioned, it would have serious racial justice implications. I mean, come on. Spare me with the freaking drama here. This is ridiculous. It would have serious... Banning menthol cigarettes is going to have serious racial justice implications. I posted this on my wall earlier, getting ready for the show today and promoting it. And somebody said, a black person, he said, so what? They'll just smoke other cigarettes. I was like, yeah, no shit. Tell that to the black community, though. Like, you don't have to convince me. Tell that to Al Sharpton. Tell that to ACLU. Tell that to other organizations in the woke mob who are considering this a very serious and racial justice implications. Such a ban will trigger criminal penalties, which will disproportionately impact people of color, as well as prioritize criminalization over public health and harm reduction. A ban will also lead to unconstitutional, this is so stupid, unconstitutional policing and other negative interactions with local law enforcement. All because we're going to ban a freaking cigarette. What this is saying is we are trying to have zero interaction with the black community as far as law enforcement is concerned right now. So let's make sure, no matter what's illegal, try not to go after the black community too much because we want to reduce the interaction. So let the black community run rogue, let them run wild, let them do whatever they want to do, because we'd rather just let them do it than actually go after them for illegal activities. So the less things that are illegal, the less interactions with the black community we have. Hence the reason I say, well, if you just legalize crack, then we won't have to keep arresting black people for consuming crack or other drugs. They've already done with marijuana. Let's just go all the way with it. But if you're going to do that, then you need to legalize heroin, because you can't just target, or you can't let off black people for drug use, but not white people. That's not okay. So I think they need to be very careful with the direction they head here before the white community say, you know what, we've had fucking enough of this, and we're going to start voicing our concerns about the situation and getting up in law enforcement's face and policymakers and everybody else that comes up with these ridiculous guidelines. So it's now unconstitutional. A ban will also lead to unconstitutional policing and other negative interactions with local law enforcement. The letter referenced the recent police-involved deaths of George Floyd. Obviously, let's bring George Floyd, Daunte Wright, Oh, Ma'Khia Bryant now is on the list of martyrs, even though she was running at somebody with a knife ready to stab her in the neck. So Ma'Khia is now on the list of saints and martyrs. And Eric Garner. I guess there was another one in North Carolina. I think Eric Garner is the North Carolina one. I can't even keep up these days. I mean, the media wants to highlight every single white cop on black shooting, which there are a lot of, but there's also a lot of white cop on white cop shootings, or a white cop on white people, or black cop on white people. We don't hear about every single case. So I don't know why the media keeps doing that. A number of police encounters resulting in tragic deaths are linked to police enforcement of tobacco laws. So here's how they're linking tobacco and menthol cigarettes to the black community and police reform. They're now dragging in certain cases. A number of police encounters resulting in tragic deaths are linked to police enforcement of tobacco laws. Eric Garner, killed by a police chokehold, was illegally selling Lucy cigarettes. But we didn't put a chokehold on him because he was just selling. It's not like, I love how these stories make it look like, or at least the left, make it look like the police saw somebody selling Lucy cigarettes and ran up to him, immediately put him in a chokehold. Like that was their first course of action. Not, hey, stop. They forget the part about where he ran away or he resisted arrest and then it led to some horrible situation. They make it look like the police show up on the scene, somebody's selling cigarettes illegally, and immediately the first port of action is chokehold. That's not how it went down at all. We all know that. But the media keep making it sound like that. So now everybody's like, well, hold on a second. If black people keep smoking menthols, the cops are just going to run at them, tackle them from behind without any warning, and immediately put them in a chokehold, and it might kill them. That's the narrative they're running with. And we're supposed to sit here and believe this nonsense. Michael Brown was killed after being suspected of stealing a box of cigarillos. Even the case, oh, here comes George Floyd. Now, because George Floyd used a $20 counterfeit bill used to purchase cigarettes. See, it wasn't the act of purchasing cigarettes that led to all these convictions or these deaths. It was resisting arrest. It was not obeying the cops or the police when they tried to deal with the situation, the illegal situation in the first place. So we're now linking all of these situations that went horribly wrong to, we got to go easy on the black community. You ban menthols, that's fine, but don't make it a criminal offense because we want less interaction with the black community. So what are we going to do now? Keep reducing crime or things that are highly illegal? We're now going to make them not legal just so we can have less interactions because we're being held hostage by the mob. I mean, look how fast they legalized marijuana. We've been trying to legalize marijuana for decades now. I mean, hippies, the most peace-loving people on the planet, who smoked marijuana at Woodstock back in the 70s, it was illegal. Why didn't you legalize it then? Because the black people or the black community are now holding the state hostage, and we want less engagement with law enforcement. So if we legalize marijuana, they get their way, we have less police interaction, and everybody goes home. Okay. As long as it doesn't go into manslaughter or murder, because we can't tell everybody that, well, let's just legalize knife fights. If it's a knife, let them go, let them fight, let them kill each other. Let's not have interaction. Only if it's a gun, step in. It's like, when does the madness end? So everybody who's being held hostage here, the letter also called for an approach that would avoid solutions. See, here we go. And this is where they keep dragging in police reform into all this. The letter called for an approach that would avoid solutions that will create yet another reason for armed police to engage citizens on the street based on the pretext or conduct that does not pose a threat to public safety. So they're trying to avoid solutions by legalizing these situations. And it's going to come back and bite us in the ass. Because slowly, we're going to let criminals, black or white, it has nothing to do with the color. Slowly, we are going to start seeing crime increase if we haven't already. I mean, homicides are through the roof in cities. Murders, gun, shootings, stabbings, it's through the roof because of how relaxed we are getting when it comes to police reform. And it's very dangerous for law enforcement officers. Let's see what the keyboard warrior have to say over on the comments cam about what the American people think about this insanity, because I can't be the only one who thinks this is insane. There's got to be other people who think this is absolutely ridiculous. Jessica Red, what did I just read? Exactly how does banning menthol cigarettes impact the crime rates in the black community? That's the impression I got from the article. It basically said cigarettes are the root cause of crimes committed by people of color. Exactly. She's exactly right. And this is what I've been highlighting on today's show about. You're now saying cigarettes cause crime. Cigarettes don't cause crime. It's how they resisted arrest, or the black people or anybody of any color resists arrest, and then it leads to a dangerous situation. Kathy says, if you're old enough and want to smoke any kind of cigarette and eat and drink what you want is none of the Democrats' business. It's still a free country as much as they try to take that away from us. Yes, you're right. It is a free country. Well, not for long. Kathy, not for long. It's the whole country's going to hell in a handbasket very quickly right now. And it's because we're being held hostage. Everybody's being held hostage. Companies are being held hostage. Look, the Biden administration's now being held hostage. Trump would have never allowed this. He would have put his foot down and said, I don't give a shit. We're banning it because of safety concerns. And guess what, black people? I'm concerned for your safety too. And if I really cared about you, I'd make it a hard no. And I would say, I don't care. Sorry. I don't want you dying. I'm trying to help curb addiction because apparently menthol cigarettes are highly addictive and much more addictive than your average tobacco product. So they're trying to curb addiction. They're trying to help with deaths, reduce deaths. So they're banning menthol cigarettes. So when you say, okay, wait, Al Sharpton has spoken, not fair on the black community. When you say, okay, fine, we can't produce them anymore, but you all can smoke yourself to death. That's not being concerned about the black community. That's you giving in to the woke mob and letting yourself be made hostage over the situation. And really what you're saying is, actually, I guess I don't give a shit about the black community because we're going to let them smoke themselves to death. So the whole thing is counterproductive and it's hypocritical, and it just goes to show that the Biden administration really doesn't care. They're trying to appease to everybody. Biden's trying to look like a hero, and that he's coming in and he's banning certain types of cigarettes, and I'm all about your health and safety, but I'm still going to let you smoke and kill yourself. The whole thing makes no sense. And this is why I don't think Biden stands a chance on getting elected, because he flip-flops on every issue. Look at the border crisis. It's an absolute freaking catastrophe down there right now. And he's not even letting anybody in anymore. So he ran on the promise of letting everybody storm the border. They actually start storming the border, believe it or not. They come in illegally. It's out of control. We have 5 times more illegal border crossings than at the height of what Obama called a crisis during the Trump presidency, when there were only 1,000 illegal border crossings a day. Obama called that a crisis when Trump was president. And now we have 5 times that, nearly 5,000 illegal border crossings a day. So if it was a crisis at 1,000 with Trump, what do you want to call this now? So finally, the Biden administration said, okay, we got to close the border. Shut the border. We're done. AOC loses her shit, comes online and says, this is bullshit. You ran on this promise. We're supposed to be helping these people in. Within like hours, Biden reverses the decision. Okay. Sorry, AOC. Sorry. Border's back open. Carte blanche to the insanity. Let them come in. Illegally or not, I don't care. I mean, who is running the show here? This administration needs to get their shit together, put their foot down, and start running America the way the American people want it run, including Biden's voters. Because at the end of the day, all of this flip-flopping to try to appease to anybody who voices their concern is going to put this country in a disastrous situation, if it's not already. I mean, we know it is, actually. It's completely... The whole thing is just an absolute shit show, and we're all seeing the consequences of this right now. Let's head back over to the keyboard warrior cam and see what other people have to say about this. Cindy says, when will this BS stop with this delusional administration? Growing up in the 60s and 70s, menthol cigarettes was the most popular cigarette, and all those in my family who smoked back then smoked menthol. Please stop with everything. Flipping thing is racist. And again, this is Al Sharpton coming onto the scene and saying it's unfair to the black community because now police are going to go after more people for doing illegal things. How about just don't do illegal things, people? Stop doing anything illegal and the police won't go after you. That goes for all races. Asian community, Indian community, white people, no one's exempt from that. If you partake in illegal activities, you are going to have to suffer the consequences. That's just the deal. So Al Sharpton said, nope, it's another excuse to go after the black community. You're going to outlaw something that they love. Biden says, okay, fine. Black people can smoke themselves to death. I guess I really don't give a shit about their safety, even though I claim I do. Which one is it, Biden? Do you care about the safety of others or don't you? You can't have it both ways. He says, another unconstitutional act by this White House. I'm not a smoker, but another act of taking away people's rights. Wake up, America. This is all about control. Now, usually I would agree with Keith. You know, I'd put my Constitution hat on and say, that's right. Unconstitutional. Well, not really. Listen, because you'd have to allow every single illegal or harmful product. And that would mean the FDA is not allowed to ban anything. So I don't really agree with this comment. I think if something's really harmful, we have to ban it. If we legalized heroin, we'd have a real pandemic on our hand, not this fake coronavirus scamdemic shit. We'd have a real pandemic on our hand. If heroin was legal, then we would see everybody dropping left, right, and center in the streets dead. So I do think we need to protect each other, but what I think we have to do is make sure we kind of include black people in protecting them. Not saying, okay, we'll let the black community run rogue, smoke menthols, and they can continue to kill themselves. I mean, if it's harmful, take it off the market. Megan says, but couldn't one say that this will help people of color? Exactly my point, Megan. If a large population of African Americans smoke menthols and smoking is bad, then banning menthols could improve their health. Should this be a priority right now? No. Do we have bigger fish to fry in this country? Absolutely. Should people in America be able to choose to smoke or not because, after all, we are free? Yes. But most importantly, do people need to stop pulling the race card out for every single thing? For the love of God, yes. And she's right. We have got to stop playing the race card on every single goddamn matter. And Al Sharpton is only doing it because Al Sharpton needs his ratings. Al Sharpton needs to be in the limelight to make his money. That's what you do as a public figure. You cause controversy. You can't just let anything slide without putting your controversial spin on it. I mean, look, it happens in the media every day. CNN's got their spin. Fox News has their spin. So we know the deal. Al Sharpton's jumped on the bandwagon, and he needs to play the race card every moment or opportunity he has. So at some point, it's going to backfire on them. And it actually has. It's actually backfiring in Georgia. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp told Fox and Friends yesterday, Thursday, President Biden and Georgia voting rights activist Stacey Abrams have driven the woke cancel culture movement too far. And now it has backfired on the Democratic Party for lying about the state's election law. And they did lie. They absolutely lied about it. It's very clear what the bill says. It's very clear what the laws are. And they made it all about black people, that it was going to be, for some reason, harder for them to vote. I don't understand how. I don't know why black people can't take off work that day when white people can. I don't know why black people can't get to the polls like white people can. I don't get it. They're constantly making black people look like this really uneducated community of people who don't know how to find a polling booth. And it's not fair to the black community, to be honest. I don't think it's cute. I think it's disgusting the way that Biden and Abrams are playing it right now. And it's making them all look like a very, very weak and uneducated race. Why are we doing this to the black community? And I think this is where Governor Kemp's comments come in about this is now going the other way. This has gone too far and it's starting to backfire. And I think it is, because you're seeing more white people stand up against this when we shouldn't have really gotten in the argument in the first place. But like, enough's enough now. So more people are coming out against the woke mob, against cancel culture. And guess who suffers? The black community, because they are caught in the line of fire. And this is why I've always had a problem with Black Lives Matter. Not because I don't support police reform, not because I don't support improving the lives of black people, because I absolutely do. I absolutely support curbing racism. I know it exists, but I think it exists at an all-time high because the media won't shut the hell up about it. And CNN wants to put their bullshit fake spin on every story. And what does that do to somebody like me? It makes me go into all outright attack mode. Why? Because I know it's bullshit. And I can't stand for it as a political commentator or somebody who wants to report facts. So I feel the need to call CNN out when they omit the facts. So what does that do? It raises the tension levels on everybody. So people are like, actually, yeah, Matt's right. And then they all jump on with comments. And then sadly, a lot of these comments turn into really angry, shitty comments and attacks on the black community. Is that what I want? Absolutely not. Am I going to ignore the fact that CNN omits facts? Of course not. Somebody commented on my wall the other day. They said, Matt, why do you keep posting this stuff? Isn't this just fueling the racial divide even further? And I said, no, I'm only commenting on the bullshit. The media are the real fuel here. Mainstream media and their omission of facts that then lead to people like me feeling the need to counter this insanity. So I'm only making you guys aware of it, that the whole thing is just political nonsense and total bullshit. I can't help that my followers will now jump on and start attacking BLM over it. I'm not going to silence them. They have carte blanche to say whatever they want on my pages and my news feeds. So no, I'm not the problem here. The problem is mainstream media, or at least the far left media. I actually side with Fox 99% of the time because I feel like Fox is also trying to counter the bullshit. Yeah, they have their own narrative spin. They're doing a great job right now pushing their narrative on a few issues that maybe aren't 100% just. But I do find that Fox tries to counter the insanity of the left a lot more often than left-wing news agencies counter themselves. So we have an issue here with it going completely the other way. The woke cancel culture movement backfired on Joe Biden. Stacey Abrams, Governor Kemp said. So how exactly has it backfired? Let's take a look at the article. Governor Kemp told Fox and Friends Thursday, President Biden and Georgia voting rights activist Stacey Abrams have driven the woke cancel culture movement too far, and it's now backfired on the Democratic Party because they lie. They constantly lie, and the left are starting to see the lies for what they are. You can't keep lying and expect your own party to not at some point get freaking annoyed. So Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia said, when you have the president of the United States getting 4 Pinocchios from the Washington Post, which I love the term 4 Pinocchios, Stacey Abrams getting 2, because quite honestly, they're just lying about Georgia's law. Senator Tim Scott, and I loved that Tim Scott dropped that bomb the other day, 2 days ago. He just came out, he's like, Biden, screw this systemic racism nonsense. Tim Scott, Senator, Republican, comes online and says, I am done with the left calling America a racist country. It's not a racist country. If you want to be successful, you work your ass off. America has given me the opportunity to get to where I am, and I'm not going to let Joe Biden undermine that, because that's exactly what the left do. They undermine all the good that black people have actually accomplished because they won't shut the hell up about systemic racism and playing the victim card. So Governor Brian Kemp is obviously calling Biden and Abrams liars. Tim Scott is exactly right. It makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat in Georgia, and that is what that bill does. That's all the bill does. And other Republican states are now following Georgia's lead. They don't give a shit about Major League Baseball leaving Georgia. The Masters didn't leave. The Masters put their foot down and said, you're not going to... Anyway, we're here to play golf. Okay? And guess what? The Masters actually cared about Georgia, which is why they stayed. They actually cared about the black community, which is why they stayed. Because Major League Baseball leaving Georgia and going to a white, wealthy, affluent area in Colorado did nothing but destroy $100 million the black community lost in Georgia. $100 million. How is that helping or taking a stance and fighting for the black community? You just killed that economy in Georgia. So the Masters said, you know what, we're not leaving. We're not going to screw the black community. We don't give a shit what Stacey Abrams has to say about anything. She claims she's protecting you. She's not. She's going to kill your economy. So we're going to do the right thing and we're going to stay. And we don't care. You think Masters ratings are going to drop? No. If anything, they freaking skyrocketed. I bet more people, black people, are going to watch the Masters now or support golf because of the financial support that they contributed to the black community in Georgia. While Major League Baseball's ratings are getting crushed by making such a stupid decision by taking their All-Star game over to Colorado, an affluent, wealthy, white area. How does that help the black community? So when Kemp says, this is counterproductive now, this is really hurting Georgia, and they've gone too far, this is what he's talking about. He's not going to negotiate with terrorists. Okay, and I thought our politicians in the White House would have done the same thing. We're not I thought we don't negotiate with terrorists. Governor Kemp put his foot down and said, I don't care. I'm not being held hostage by this bullshit. I'm passing a bill that protects voter integrity. I'm not doing anything to discriminate. There's no gerrymandering here. We're just trying to protect and make it harder for people to cheat. I respect that. I think it's phenomenal that he's done that. Stacey Abrams can run her mouth all she wants about it. But I'd rather have less cheating and more accurate voting across all of America. Sadly, we're only going to see that in Republican states because the Democrat states are going to be held hostage to the woke mob, the left, and they're going to bend over for this nonsense. All because of votes. All because of votes. Well, they want to illegally get the vote. That's why. I mean, look what's happened in Washington, D.C. right now. They're trying to make it a state desperately. Why, after hundreds of years, right now, today, are they trying to make D.C. a state? Why? Because they need those 2 congressional seats, because for the first time ever, the Democrats have never been more worried about losing the House. So they're stacking the deck once again. They need those 2. They needed those 2 added seats because we've seen 6 states lose congressional seats. 6 Democratic states have lost congressional seats. And we've gained 7 congressional seats in Republican states. The House is only dominated by the left, 222 to I think 212 or 211. I can't remember off the top of the head, but it's not a wide gain. So that huge swing in congressional seats, losing 6 on the Democrat side, gaining 7 on the Republican side, is freaking them out. And it's the reason they want to make DC a state so they can gain 2 more congressional seats. All of a sudden. So we know the Democrats stack the deck. That's what they do. Let's head back to the article. Governor Brian Kemp says, unfortunately, really, this far-reaching woke cancel culture movement that's out there, that's driven by people like Stacey Abrams, and even the White House has backfired because they simply don't read the bill. But I do think it is part of their playbook, guys, to push H.R. 1, which is an unconstitutional power grab and a federalization of elections that even a lot of Democrat Secretary of States don't think is a good idea. And our founders certainly didn't. And that is the most unconstitutional thing that the White House can do right now, is hijack our election laws. The states are supposed to control the election laws. We don't need Biden and the insane left controlling all 50 states' election laws. It's not up to them. Stay out of it. The administration needs to stay out of it. Let the states do their thing. Just like they told Trump to stay out of it, they need to tell Biden out to stay the hell out of it. They were very quick to tell Trump, you're not needed here. We run our states, not you. So why aren't we taking the same stance right now against Biden? So over to the keyboard warrior cam and see what the American people have to say about the fact that the woke cancer culture movement has now backfired on Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams, according to Governor Kemp. Jewel says, just goes to show that bullying, lying, harassment, intimidation, and control only goes so far. Everyone has their limits. Then they push back. Watch out, Georgia. The red tsunami is coming. We got to flip Georgia back red. We got to dominate the 2022 primaries. That red wave is coming. Those 6 congressional seat losses in Democratic states and 7 gained in Republican states is monumental for the 2022 primaries. And we do need to stay focused on that. Shane says, odd to see Fox using the word line and election in the same sentence after they helped push Trump's election lies to the point where supporters mindlessly attacked the Capitol and tried to overthrow democracy. That's not really an apples to apples comparison here, okay? Trump had reason to believe that there was fraudulent activity conducted amongst the presidential election. So he raised his concerns. Kemp is just putting in a bill that strengthens election integrity. So, yes, we are calling Biden and Abrams a liar because what they said is just simply not true about the measures put in place for Kemp's Georgia election bill. And if you read the bill, you would absolutely know that Biden and Abrams have been lying the whole time. So yeah, Fox supported Trump's right to question integrity election, just like Mitch McConnell did, and pretty much every other Republican, and a lot of Democrats did too. You want to challenge the votes? Challenge the votes. We have laws in place to be able to challenge votes. So President Trump only implemented or exercised his right to use those laws to go after and hold recounts. And he lost. All we're trying to do is strengthen election integrity. That's all Kemp's trying to do. And I think he's done a great job, and I love seeing other Republicans follow suit. Jim says a woke person is just another word for someone with an opinion. While we all have our opinions and beliefs, a woke person is one who is so one way and single-minded in their opinions that they are unwilling to grant others the courtesy of having an opinion that is different from theirs. That is why deception is so tragic, because deceived people do not know that they are deceived. Otherwise, they would not be deceived. And woke people will never realize or admit that they are being played by foe. Journalists and power-hungry politicians who lack any character and integrity. God help us. That is a classic definition of a woke person. Somebody who's so single-minded in their opinions that they are unwilling to grant others the courtesy of having an opinion that is different from theirs. That is your classic definition of being woke. Absolutely 100% agree with. And it's a phenomenal comment to end today's show on. So the woke mob have taken things too far. It's starting to become counterproductive. The white community have woken up to the bullshit and are now attacking back when people like Al Sharpton come out and say banning menthol cigarettes is unfair to the black community. And when other black groups come out and say it's disproportionately causing racial injustice. It's a freaking menthol cigarette. Biden banned them because he wants to actually protect the black community. But Al Sharpton has other agendas, and Biden's now going back on the word saying, okay, fine. I did want to protect you, but go ahead, smoke yourself to death. Which one is it? Thank you guys so much for joining You Made It Political today. We live stream every morning here to Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. You guys have an awesome weekend. We'll see you next week, 10 o'clock.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out You Made It Political.